Have you ever stared at your retirement account balance and felt that sinking feeling in your stomach? You know the one. That moment when you realize the number staring back at you couldn't fund a decent vacation, let alone decades of not working. Meanwhile, financial experts are throwing around numbers like 1 million, 2 million, or even $3 million, and you're sitting there wondering if they're living on the same planet as the rest of us. Here's something that might shock you. The amount of money you actually need to retire forever isn't what most people think it is. And those scary seven-figure numbers that keep you awake at night, they might be completely wrong for your situation. In fact, you could be either massively oversaving for a retirement you'll never need, or dangerously undersaving for a future that's going to blindside you financially. My name is Zach, and I've spent countless hours digging through retirement research, talking to financial planners, and breaking down the real math behind permanent financial freedom. If you're tired of getting vague advice about retirement that doesn't actually help you plan for your specific situation, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button, because what I'm about to share could completely change how you think about your financial future. Most people approach retirement planning completely backwards. They pick some arbitrary number they heard on a podcast or read in a magazine, then spend the next 30 years hoping they can somehow reach it. But here's what nobody talks about. Retirement isn't actually about reaching a specific dollar amount. It's about creating enough passive income to cover your expenses for the rest of your life without ever having to work again. Think about that for a moment. The goal isn't to accumulate the biggest pile of money possible. The goal is to generate enough monthly income that you never have to depend on a paycheck again. This fundamental shift in thinking changes everything about how you should be planning and saving. According to Northwestern Mutual's latest research, Americans believe they need about $1.26 million to retire comfortably. That number dropped from $1.46 million just last year, which tells you something interesting. Even the experts can't agree on what the magic number should be. But here's the problem with focusing on these massive totals. They're based on assumptions that might have absolutely nothing to do with your actual life. The traditional approach uses something called the 4% rule. Basically, you take whatever amount you think you'll need annually in retirement and multiply it by 25. So if you want $60,000 per year in retirement, you'd need $1.5 million saved up. The idea is that you can withdraw 4% of your total savings each year, and your money should theoretically last forever. But this rule was created decades ago based on historical market performance and economic conditions that don't necessarily reflect today's reality. Interest rates were different, healthcare costs were different, life expectancy was different. People retired at 65 and died at 78. Today, you might retire at 60 and live to 95. That's a completely different financial equation. Here's where things get really interesting. Your retirement number isn't actually about the total amount you save. It's about three much more important factors. First, how much money do you actually spend each year? Second, what percentage of that spending can be covered by guaranteed income sources like Social Security? And third, how efficiently can you convert your savings into reliable monthly income? Let's break down the spending question first, because this is where most people make their biggest mistakes. Financial advisors typically suggest you'll need somewhere between 55 and 80% of your pre-retirement income to maintain your lifestyle. But think about what expenses actually disappear when you stop working. You're no longer commuting to an office every day. That eliminates gas, parking, car maintenance, and all those expensive work lunches. You're not buying professional clothing or contributing to retirement accounts because you're already retired. You might pay off your mortgage before you retire, eliminating your biggest monthly expense entirely. When you add up all these savings, many retirees discover they can live comfortably on significantly less than they earned while working. On the flip side, some expenses might actually increase in retirement. Healthcare costs tend to rise as you get older, especially if your employer was covering a significant portion of your insurance premiums. You might want to travel more, pursue expensive hobbies, or help support adult children or grandchildren. The key is being realistic about your specific situation, rather than relying on generic percentages. This brings us to the second factor, which is guaranteed income. Social Security benefits replace roughly 40% of your pre-retirement earnings for most people. The average retiree receives about $2,000 per month, though this varies dramatically based on your lifetime earnings and when you decide to start collecting benefits. If you earned consistently high incomes throughout your career and delay collecting Social Security until age 70, your monthly benefit could approach $5,000. But if you had lower lifetime earnings or start collecting at age 62, you might receive less than $1,000 per month. Understanding your specific Social Security projection is crucial for retirement planning because it directly affects how much you need to save privately. Some people also have traditional pension plans, though these are becoming increasingly rare in the private sector. If you're lucky enough to have a pension, that guaranteed monthly income significantly reduces the amount you need to save independently. Government employees and some union workers often have access to these defined benefit plans that can provide substantial retirement security. The third factor is conversion efficiency, and this is where most retirement advice completely fails people. It's not enough to accumulate a big pile of money. You need to convert that money into reliable monthly income that lasts for decades. This is much more complex than simply withdrawing 4% annually. Different types of accounts have different tax implications when you start withdrawing money. Traditional retirement accounts like 401(k) plans and traditional IRAs require you to pay income taxes on every dollar you withdraw. Roth accounts let you withdraw contributions tax-free, but they have different rules about earnings and timing. Taxable investment accounts offer more flexibility, but less tax protection while you're saving. The sequence of these withdrawals can dramatically impact how long your money lasts. Drawing from the wrong accounts at the wrong times could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars in unnecessary taxes over your retirement. This is why many financial planners recommend having money in multiple types of accounts to give you flexibility in managing your tax burden as a retiree. Market timing also affects conversion efficiency in ways most people don't consider. If you retire right before a major market crash and start withdrawing money while your investments are losing value, you could deplete your savings much faster than expected. This is called sequence of returns risk, and it's one of the biggest threats to retirement security that nobody talks about. The reality is that retirement planning isn't about hitting some magical number that guarantees financial security forever. It's about creating a comprehensive system that generates reliable income, minimizes taxes, provides flexibility for unexpected expenses, and adapts to changing economic conditions over potentially several decades of retirement. Understanding these fundamentals changes everything about how you should be saving and investing for retirement. Instead of blindly contributing to accounts and hoping for the best, you can make strategic decisions based on your specific goals, timeline, and circumstances. But here's what makes this even more complicated. The amount you need to retire isn't just different from person to person. It's different based on when you want to retire, where you want to live, and what kind of lifestyle you're planning to fund. Someone retiring at 62 in rural Tennessee needs a completely different financial strategy than someone retiring at 67 in San Francisco. Let me give you a real example that illustrates just how dramatically these variables can affect your retirement number. Meet Sarah, a teacher who earns $54,000 annually at age 25. Her income grows modestly over her career to about $100,000 by the time she reaches 67. Using traditional retirement planning advice, Sarah needs roughly $45,000 per year from her savings to maintain her lifestyle, with Social Security covering the rest. But here's where it gets interesting. If Sarah takes advantage of her employer's 5% matching contribution and saves 10% of her income herself, she hits that magical 15% total savings rate that financial advisors recommend. Starting with $5,400 this year, her consistent contributions compound over 4 decades into a substantial retirement fund. The power of compound interest in Sarah's situation is absolutely staggering. Those early contributions she makes in her 20s and 30s grow for decades before she ever touches them. By the time she retires, The money she saved in her first 10 years of working has multiplied many times over. This is why starting early matters so much more than starting with large amounts. But let's talk about what happens if Sarah wants to retire earlier than 67. The FIRE movement, which stands for Financial Independence Retire Early, has completely flipped traditional retirement thinking on its head. Instead of saving 15% of income and retiring at 67, FIRE advocates save 50 to 70% of their income to retire in their 30s, 40s, or 50s. This might sound impossible, but the math is actually quite straightforward. If you can live on 30% of your income and save 70%, you're essentially saving more than 2 years of living expenses for every year you work. After about 10 to 15 years of this aggressive saving, you've accumulated enough to fund decades of retirement. The FIRE approach has several variations that cater to different lifestyle preferences. Lean FIRE focuses on achieving financial independence with minimal expenses, allowing people to retire on smaller investment portfolios by maintaining very modest lifestyles. Fat FIRE targets early retirement while maintaining or exceeding middle-class living standards, requiring much larger savings targets but providing more lifestyle flexibility. Then there's Barista FIRE, which describes semi-retirement supported by part-time work. This approach recognizes that you don't need to completely replace your full-time income if you're willing to work occasionally for extra money and benefits like health insurance. Many people find this middle ground more achievable and less restrictive than full retirement. The key insight from the FIRE movement isn't necessarily that everyone should retire at 35. It's that the relationship between your savings rate and your retirement timeline is much more direct than most people realize. Every percentage point increase in your savings rate dramatically reduces the number of years you need to work. If you're wondering whether you need to join the FIRE movement or follow traditional retirement advice, subscribe to the channel right now because I'm going to break down exactly how to calculate your personal retirement number based on your specific situation and goals. The strategies I'm sharing work regardless of whether you want to retire early or follow a more conventional timeline. Here's something that might surprise you about retirement numbers. The difference between needing $1 million and needing $2 million often comes down to just a few key decisions you make decades before you retire: where you choose to live, how you manage healthcare costs, and when you decide to start collecting Social Security can swing your retirement needs by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Geographic arbitrage is one of the most powerful tools for reducing retirement costs that almost nobody talks about. The difference in cost of living between expensive cities and affordable areas can be enormous. Someone who needs $80,000 annually to maintain their lifestyle in Boston might need only $40,000 in a place like Chattanooga or Boise. This doesn't mean you have to move to the middle of nowhere to afford retirement. It means understanding that your location choices have massive financial implications. Some retirees strategically relocate to states with no income tax, lower property taxes, or significantly cheaper healthcare systems. Others discover they can afford a higher quality of life in smaller cities or international destinations where their dollars stretch further. Healthcare costs represent one of the biggest wildcards in retirement planning. Medicare covers many medical expenses for people over 65, but it doesn't cover everything. Long-term care, dental work, and prescription medications can create substantial out-of-pocket costs. Some retirees spend more on healthcare in retirement than they spent on housing while working. Planning for healthcare costs requires thinking beyond basic insurance premiums. You might need home modifications for aging in place, assisted living care, or expensive treatments for chronic conditions. These costs are difficult to predict, but can easily consume tens of thousands of dollars annually. Building healthcare contingencies into your retirement planning isn't pessimistic, it's realistic. The timing of when you claim Social Security benefits creates another major variable in your retirement equation. You can start collecting reduced benefits as early as 62, receive full benefits at your designated retirement age around 67, or delay benefits until 70 to receive enhanced payments. Starting Social Security at 62 could result in monthly payments that are 30% smaller than waiting until full retirement age. But delaying until 70 increases your monthly benefit by roughly 8% for each year you wait. For someone with a full retirement age benefit of $2,000 monthly, claiming at 62 might yield only $1,400, while waiting until 70 could provide $2,400. This decision affects not just your monthly income, but your total lifetime benefits. If you live into your 90s, delaying Social Security could result in hundreds of thousands of additional dollars over your retirement. But if you have health concerns or need income immediately, claiming earlier might make more sense despite the reduced monthly payments. Tax planning becomes increasingly important as you approach and enter retirement. The types of accounts you've been saving in throughout your career determine how much of your retirement income you'll actually get to keep. Traditional retirement accounts require you to pay taxes on withdrawals, while Roth accounts allow tax-free distributions under most circumstances. Many retirees discover they're in higher tax brackets than expected because their retirement withdrawals, Social Security benefits, and other income sources push them into elevated tax ranges. Strategic withdrawal planning can help minimize these taxes, but it requires understanding complex rules about required minimum distributions, tax bracket management, and the taxation of Social Security benefits. This is where having money in different types of accounts provides valuable flexibility. You might withdraw from traditional accounts in years when your other income is low, use Roth accounts when you want to avoid additional taxable income, and rely on taxable accounts when you need access to money before age 59.5 without penalties. The sequence of returns risk I mentioned earlier deserves more attention because it can completely derail retirement plans that look solid on paper. This risk occurs when you experience poor investment returns early in retirement, while simultaneously withdrawing money to fund your living expenses. Here's the thing that nobody wants to admit about retirement planning. There's no magic number that works for everyone. The amount you need to retire forever depends entirely on the life you want to live, the choices you make along the way, and how strategically you approach the decades leading up to retirement. Whether you need $500,000 or $5 million isn't determined by some universal formula. It's determined by your spending, your location, your health, your family situation, and dozens of other personal factors that no financial advisor can predict for you. But here's what I can tell you with absolute certainty. The people who retire successfully aren't the ones who save the most money. They're the ones who understood their own numbers, made intentional choices about their lifestyle and expenses, and created systems that generate reliable income for decades. Stop obsessing over whether you're behind some imaginary benchmark and start focusing on the factors you can actually control. Your savings rate, your investment strategy, your spending habits, and your timeline are all within your power to influence. The path to financial independence isn't about following someone else's plan. It's about creating your own plan based on your actual life and circumstances. Your retirement number is out there waiting for you to discover it, but you'll never find it by copying what worked for someone else. If this video helped you think differently about retirement planning, make sure you're subscribed because I've got more content coming that will help you build wealth on your own terms. Your future self is counting on the decisions you make today.